What's up guys, welcome to Echo Productions, I'm Silas Willoughby, and today we're taking a quick look at how to shoot and edit like Peter McKinnon. Alright, so something you may have noticed is that everything was super smooth and slow. And this is one of the most important things for getting that Peter McKinnon-esque look to your footage. There's a new Instagram hashtag for you, Peter. If you're watching this, you should start using it. Anyway, Peter usually shoots in 120 FPS on his 1DX for all of his B-roll shots. And for that sequence I showed you at the beginning, I shot it in 60 FPS in 1080p, since my camera doesn't do 120 in HD. Another very important thing to do is leave your aperture wide open so you can get a nice shallow depth of field. Something you will notice from Peter's B-roll is how smooth his bokeh is. And this is because not only is he shooting at like f1.8, but he usually uses a 70 to 200mm lens. And longer focal lengths tend to compress the background and give a much smoother bokeh. I actually use my 25mm lens most of the time, which on a micro four thirds body adds up to a 50mm full frame equivalent. And for some of the shots I use my Rokinon 85mm lens. Those are the two biggest things, so without wasting any more of your time, let's jump into Premiere and get started on editing. So I've already imported my footage and I shot all of this in 60 FPS and 1080p HD, so I can get some nice smooth slow motion. And the first thing I want to do is slow it down. To do this I'm highlighting it all, right click, modify, interpret footage, assume this frame rate, and then match our project settings of 23.976 FPS. This will really slow down your footage instead of just going to speed duration in your timeline, which usually leaves it all choppy and gross. Next, I want to drag the clips I want to use onto my timeline. Okay, so as you can see here, I've already added a few clips, and I want to start with the color grading. Peter has a very unique color grading style, and I know he sells his LUTs, but you're probably not watching this video if you already have them. The first thing I want to do is add an adjustment layer, and then go to the basic corrections in the Lumetri panel. Now, Peter's videos are always very punchy and high contrast, much like his photos. They're also usually very cold. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is adjust the exposure. Now, while the shot was well exposed in camera, I want to underexpose it just a little bit. So I'm pulling the exposure down to -0.3. Next, I want to pull the contrast up to around 20. To keep the picture from being too dark, I'm going to the highlights and pulling that up to about 9. Then I'm going to the shadows and pulling those down to about -20. Something Peter's videos almost always have are very dark blacks, so pulling the shadows down and adding contrast really helps, but I also want to go to the blacks and pull them down to a -20 as well. Then I want to drop the saturation a little bit so we can really start tuning in the look. I'm pulling it down to about 80. Now I want to get that really cool look of Peter's color grading. To do this, I'm going back up to the top and pulling the temperature down to about -10. This really cools the video down. Then I want to go to the hue and push that towards magenta to try and get our skin tones matching what Peter's usually look like. Now, if you have a Canon camera, I wouldn't push the hue very much at all, and I'm pretty sure Peter doesn't do this on his 1DX. I'm just trying to match it. I'm leaving mine somewhere between 2 and 5. Okay, so as you can see, that's looking really washed out and gross. So let's go down to the Creative tab. The first thing I want to do is sharpen our footage. I'm dragging that up to around 15. Now I want to pull the vibrance up to 20 and saturation to about 110 to get rid of that really washed out look. Now, I would usually saturate the image a little bit more, but Peter seemed to be a little bit washed out in general. Next, go to the shadow tint and pull that towards blue or teal, just a little bit. Then pull the highlights subtly towards orange. I'm not pulling the highlights towards orange too much because I want to avoid getting a teal and orange look, but I do want to balance out the blues in the shadows. Without putting a little bit of orange in the highlights, the image just looks way too blue overall. Now I want to pull the tint balance up to about 10. This will help us avoid that teal and orange look a little bit more. Now in the curves, I want to add the subtlest of S-curves, just to make the video pop a little bit more. Next, I want to go to the HSL secondary color and choose a reddish color, and then go to the saturation and turn that up just a little bit, maybe 115. Here is it with and without. And as you can see, it's not making a huge difference, but it does really help tie it all together. Finally, if you watch a lot of Peter's videos, you may start to notice that some of the shots have a vignette. So I'm going to add a very slight vignette. I'm going to leave it at about -0.5. And there you go. Here's our before and after. Now I just want to drag this over the rest of my clips, and if there's anything I want to change about individual clips, I'll just go in the Lumetri color on those individual clips. As you can see, it's looking great on a few of these other clips. Now, I've gone ahead and created a LUT from this project, and I've put a link in the description where you can download it for free if you're interested. However, if you can, I'd highly suggest you check out Peter's LUTs. You can always learn a lot from other creators' presets, and his are pretty great LUTs. Anyway, let's move on. At the start of that sequence I showed you at the beginning of the video, I did this drop-down CinemaScope bars effect. And doing this is incredibly easy. Just grab an overlay and then drag it over your footage. Now go to the beginning and scale it up so it's not visible in the frame, and set a keyframe. Now advance about a second and set the scale back to 100%. Boom! Instant drop-down bars effect. I've put a link for free CinemaScope crop overlay packages in the notes down below. Anyway, this is something Peter does all the time in his vlogs to transition from the talking parts to the cinematic B-roll we all love. Now, you probably saw that I did a few cool transitions in that sequence, like the Luma fade effect and this zoom transition. And if you're interested in learning how to do either of these, I just made a tutorial on how to do the Luma fade effect in Adobe Premiere Pro, and I'll be making a second tutorial on the zoom transition this week as well. So make sure to subscribe if you're interested. Now, I don't condone ripping off other creators' styles at all, but learning the basics of what other creators do is a great place to get started and a good way to learn a lot in a really short span of time. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you have any other creators you think I should do this kind of video for, and what you thought of this video. But that's all I've got for you guys today. This is Medical Productions, I'm Silas Willoughby, and I'll see you next week.